Would you like to grow a Streptocarpus from seed that look like this? This is one of my new seedlings and it's done really well. Now in this video, I'm not going to show you how to grow them from seed. I've done that in a separate video and I'll put a link to that at the end of this one. What I want to do in this video is take you from this stage. The seed is germinated and you have tiny little seedlings, and in this video I'm going to take you from this to this. This is a pot where I sowed seed about 5 weeks ago. Now I've taken some seedlings out of here and left the rest, and they're growing nicely. But if we have a look at this pot, you'll see a variety of different sizes. Down here we have some very small seedlings. So this is one plant, another one here, a third one here, very tiny one here. But if we look over here, we see a nice large leaf. It's a big leaf here too, another big one in here. What happens is that the seed germinates at different rates. Some germinates within a few days, and some of these will take 2 or 3 weeks to germinate. So you have different size plants in this pot. The other thing that happens is that if the seeds germinate and there's too many in an area, so here for instance is quite congested, what happens is that a few of the large plants will start growing quicker and they shade out the light from the small ones, and the small ones don't grow at all. You don't have to do anything at this point. Some people will leave this pot the way it is for another 3-4 weeks. Let the seedlings get good and large until they're so large they cover the soil completely. Then they'll come along, dump the whole thing out, and repot the seedlings. I've done that in the past, and what I find is that there's a lot of little guys hidden that just don't grow. Once they don't get light, they stop growing. So I think it's better to start pricking these seedlings out as they grow. What I like to do at this stage is take out some of the largest ones, put them in a new pot, leave the small ones, they'll continue growing, and then I'll come back in 2 or 3 weeks and do it all over again. It's a little more work that way, but you will get faster growing seedlings if you do that. I just prepare another pot, and the soil I use in here is the same as my seedling mix, and that's the same soil I use for my large plants. It's basically ProMix with a little added perlite to increase the drainage. Why have different soils for these various stages? It's not necessary. So I've kept this soil fairly loose, and now it's time to pick some of these guys out. And I like to use this tool, which is just an old steak knife. And I also like to use a good set of tweezers. Either one works fine. So I'll come in here and try and find a large plant. Here's a good one here. And try and pull it out from the leaf. If you give it a very gentle tug, the roots will come out because the root system is not very large yet. There's one of the little guys. Let's see if we can find another one here. This is a good one. Now you can see in this case I've got several of them. I could move all of these over or put the small ones back in here. Either one works, but I think these are all large enough. I'll just pot them up over here. I want to get this one here too. It's nice and large. Alright, that's enough for now. Let me show you how I plant these. Gently touch the plant at the tip of the leaf, make a bit of a hole, and gently put it in place here. Some people will put each one of these in an individual pot, but I think they do better in a community pot like this. Very small pots dry out far too fast for me. A larger pot dries out less and I have to water less. And they seem to like having company, provided they're not too crowded. You want to make sure that each plant is going to get lots of light and that there's space around it to grow. Now this one's a little smaller than I usually transplant, but he'll be fine. Now here's a really tiny one, but I bet it will grow fine in here. So what I would do now is get a few more seedlings, fill this area over here, then water it in from the top. I want to settle the soil around the roots. Because I've done some root damage to these plants, I want to keep the humidity a little higher. And so I'll put it into a baggie. And I don't zip it, but I do fold it over. That will raise the humidity in here, and I'll keep it like this for 3 or 4 days to give the new roots a chance to get settled. Then I'll come along and I'll open it up a little bit for a day or two. Then 3 days later I'll come along and open it some more. I want to slowly get these seedlings used to less humidity. 2 weeks from now, they don't need the bag at all. This is a pot I put together a couple weeks ago, and you can see the seedlings are much larger. These came out of this pot, but you can see that once they have enough space, they just grow so well. I'd like to point out something else that's a bit unique about Streptocarpus. If you have a look at this plant here, you'll see one large leaf and one very tiny one. Over here we have another one with a very large leaf and then a very small leaf down here. And that's normal for Streptocarpus. If we have a look at this plant here, it has 2 larger leaves, and that's unusual for Streptocarpus. These initial leaves are called cotyledons, and if you were growing something like tomatoes or peas or beans or any of the vegetables, the plant would make 2 cotyledons, and then in the center you would get a stem up, and that's when it would make a true leaf. Streptocarpus don't do that. They make 2 cotyledon leaves, and then one of the 2 grows and the other one stays small. So if you see something like this, don't be alarmed, that's normal. Something like this, it's a little unusual, but it's normal too, and this plant will be fine. What these seedlings don't do is make a center stem, and that's what you expect from your tomato plant. These leaves will get larger and larger and larger until they reach a point where they'll make another leaf out of the crown. But for quite a few weeks, you'll only have the 2 leaves. When should you start fertilizing seedlings? In this pot here, you could just use water. These plants will get enough nutrients from the soil. Once they're this stage, I start fertilizing them the same way I fertilize my larger plants. I give them about 100 ppm of nitrogen, and that seems to work well. So how do we get these guys into large flowering plants? I'll leave these seedlings in here until they start getting too crowded. And I know that they're too crowded when the leaves aren't getting enough light. You don't want these leaves shading each other too much. At that point, I'll take a couple of the largest ones and pot them up individually in a small pot like this. I'll take the smaller ones and put them back into a community pot like this, but then I might only have 3 plants in the pot. And then I'll grow those on until they get a little larger. And then even those get a pot like this. Once they're growing on their own in a pot, then it's just a matter of slowly moving them up to a larger pot size as they need it. Don't rush that process. Streptocarpus like to be root bound. So I've had some of these seedlings actually flower in this size pot. But usually I move them out of here before they're ready to flower. And that's really all there's to it. How long does all this process take? Well, you can go from seed to flowering strap in about 8 months. A lot depends on your lighting, better lighting, faster growth. How much you feed them. Feed them a little more, they grow a little faster. And it also depends on the actual seedlings. As with any group of individuals, some of these are going to grow faster than others. Growing straps from seed is really easy. And in this video, I show you how to start the whole process, from sowing the seeds to germinating those seeds. Click on this link right now.